So we're back in the kitchen with the Zojirushi Supreme and the KBS 17-in-1 to see which one's gonna handle a 1-pound loaf. So let's get started. If this is your first time on the channel, I actually have a full comparison, almost series, on the Zojirushi Home Supreme and the KBS 17-in-1, so I will definitely link those below. Now for this comparison specifically, the KBS actually is made to make a 1 pound, a 1.5 pound, and a 2 pound loaf. You can change the settings based on the loaf size of the bread that you're wanting. Whereas the Zojirushi, it is not actually recommended to do less than 1.5 pound loaf. However, I did some Googling and supposedly there are some things that you can do to make it work. So I thought that would be a good comparison, especially for people who only need 1 pound loaves. Maybe it's just for yourself, you have a smaller family, but either way, having something that can make smaller loaves might be something that you need. So what we will be doing is taking the Zojirushi mini bread machine recipe, and it's exactly a 1 pound loaf. They do make a Zojirushi mini bread machine. Now what the research has stated is with the Zojirushi, you actually want to, one, make sure you scrape down the sides, because the biggest issue is that the paddles will not actually mix the dough and form it the way that you want. You also want to do it on the basic cycle because you don't want it to overproof, and you want to start checking to see if the bread is done earlier than just letting the full cycle go. So off the bat, the Zojirushi is going to be a little bit more hand-holding. Now, if you've seen the other videos, you'll know that the Zojirushi, it is a taller bread pan, and I do think that that comes in handy when you're wanting smaller loaves. I've said it before that I really like the fact that the Zojirushi is a longer loaf pan. As you can see, it does make more of a bread type, like loaf of bread look in it, and I do like that. But I do think that's going to be one of the biggest hindrances with a 1 pound loaf. It's just so much surface area, but it does have 2 paddles where the KBS only has 1. So let's just get these ingredients in here and see what happens. So first things first, you want to make sure that your paddles are in your bread machine before you start adding your ingredients. And then each bread machine has instructions on how to add the ingredients. Most of them are going to be your liquid ingredients, then your dry ingredients, and then your yeast on the top if you're using yeast. But it is really important that you add the ingredients in the directions or in the way that the bread machine calls for. So first we're going to add 2/3 cup of warmed water, and I like to warm mine. Now with the Zojirushi, you don't technically have to warm your water because it has a preheat function, but for fairness, I went ahead and warmed that one also. Now at this point you can add 17 grams of sugar, but I wanted to use honey, so I'm going to do 1.5 tablespoons of my dad's honey in both of these. A little bit more. And I just happen to like the taste that honey gives the bread. We're gonna add 14 grams of melted butter. And then for each one of these, we're going to add 6 grams of dried milk. I have dried buttermilk. That's just what I have, so that's what we're gonna use. But we're gonna add 6 grams to both, and I've actually never worked with this in making bread. My mom does all the time, but I have not. There we go, 6 grams. Now the Zojirushi, zero that out. There we go. And then it calls for 2.8 grams of salt, but I'm just gonna do 3 grams because that would be really hard with the scale. It doesn't do 0.8, so we're just going to do 3. Just gotta zero it out. Always remember to do that. Now we're going to add 256 grams of bread flour. Now this is the part where I really prefer working with grams. When I'm adding flour, I just like it to be precise. I don't worry about it so much when it's the other, like salt and stuff like that. I know I used it this time, but I do think using the grams is the most precise way to make these recipes. All right, 256. I will say this is actually covering it a lot better than I thought it was going to. I thought it was gonna sit on top very thinly, but it is able to cover it decently. So maybe this will work out. 256. And then the final step is going to be adding the yeast on top, and I am using the bread machine instant yeast. And that is important to use in a bread machine. Once again, it's 2.8 grams, so I'm just going to do 3. There we go. 3. So now we have all our ingredients ready. Let's get them in the bread machines. And I'm gonna do the Zojirushi first because I think it might take a little bit longer and I'm gonna have to watch it a little bit more. So I wanna go ahead and get that one started. Make sure it snaps. There we go, both sides. Now for this one, it said to do a basic, but we want to do the crust on light. Okay, and I think, yeah, so that would be medium, that's dark, so light. And then let's just start it. And you can see it's preheating. It's for the KBS. It doesn't snap, it just twists in place. Like that. So we are going to do just a soft bread. So 1, we are on menu 1, but right now we're on the 1.5 pound loaf. So I do want to change that to a 1 pound loaf. And as you can see, it does change the time. I mean, not by much, but, and then we'll leave the crust on medium. So since the KBS immediately starts mixing, I don't have to wait very long to just scrape down the sides and make sure everything is well combined, which it is. I mean, it combined everything. So just gonna let this finish doing what it's doing. And then once the Zojirushi starts mixing, because it is still technically preheating, we'll come and scrape down the sides for this one too. Okay, this finally started kneading, and as you can see, it really actually did pretty good. There's a little bit right here that I'm scraping off the sides, but it really hasn't even been mixing that long. So not bad at all for it being a 1 pound loaf. So this was one of the potential issues, is that it wouldn't mix as well because it was not enough dough, but it definitely got everything off the sides. Now, will it knead the dough as well as the KBS? I don't know. All right, we'll just let this finish. Okay, the KBS just finished. I'm gonna pull this out and let it start cooling. You can see a little bit on the left side burned. When it mixed, there's a little bit stuck to the side, but we'll pull it out and see what it looks like. And you can see the Zojirushi still has 38 minutes. But I probably should check on it. Okay, I'm gonna open this really quickly just to go ahead and start checking it. Okay, it's looking good. Okay, so I set a timer so I could check this and see how it was going. I actually do think it's got a good brown color to it, so I am gonna go ahead and take this out 9 minutes, or well, 8 minutes early, and let this go ahead and cool down. Okay, so here are the finished 2 loaves. This is the one out of the KBS, and then this is the one out of the Zojirushi. As you can see, the Zojirushi actually looks like it was a little bit bigger. I think it just maybe it had more space for it to rise, maybe a little bit longer of a rise time than the KBS. I will say the Zojirushi you will have to watch, because you can see it got much darker on the outside than the KBS did. So, you know, I'm actually quite surprised with how well the Zojirushi did. I think this loaf looks pretty good, actually. I mean, it's not as pretty as like the normal loaf that comes out, but I thought it was gonna be an absolute fail from what I read, that it is not meant for a 1 pound loaf, and I don't think this one turned out terribly. So let's cut into them and see what they look like on the inside. Okay, we will cut into the KBS version first. Good crumb, a little bit dense at the bottom actually. I did notice that it was having a little bit of a hard time mixing it. It just seemed like the dough might have been a little bit drier than it should have been, but that's the inside of the KBS. And here is the inside of the Zojirushi. As you can see, it doesn't have quite the same part down here that's a little bit more compressed on the KBS. So yeah, I don't know if maybe the Zojirushi just had more room. I do feel like the crumb is a little bit better on this one. So let's taste it. Okay, so tasting the KBS first. I mean, it's good. It tastes like bread. So I think the KBS does a great job. I don't think it's actually as soft though as when you do the 2 pound loaf. I just wonder if it being like a smaller loaf, it just didn't have the same rise capabilities as I think when you make the bigger loaf. So not a huge fan of the 1 pound loaf with the KBS. I don't think it's bad. It's just not amazing. So now we're gonna try the Zojirushi, which like I said, quite impressed about. It's definitely a little bit softer. I can taste a little bit more of the burn part on it. I think with the KBS, I think you can absolutely do a 1 pound loaf in it. I just think you have to be very cognizant of the actual cook time because it could burn. But it's not bad. So final thoughts, I don't know that I care for the 1 pound loaf for either. Overall, if you want to do a 1 pound loaf, I would suggest at least doing the 1.5. I just think they work better in the machine. Definitely impressed with the Zojirushi. All right, till next time, thanks, bye.